There is a double standard in how major left-leaning media talks about law enforcement. It depends on who the officers are and who the protesters claim to be. On January 6th, assaulting police was treated as a moral emergency. The protesters were called violent extremists. They were described as a threat to democracy. And the officer who shot the unarmed woman, Ashley Babbitt, was largely defended as acting in self-defense. Now fast forward to the last several months. When ICE agents face violent protests, the language changes. Suddenly law enforcement is framed as the problem. Let's keep this simple and factual. January 6th involved a violent crowd forcing its way into the U.S. Capitol. Many officers were assaulted. During that breach, Ashley Babbitt tried to climb through a broken door near where lawmakers were being evacuated. A Capitol police officer shot her in the face, even though there was no sign of a weapon anywhere near her or on her. That shooting was investigated and ruled lawful. The message from much of the media was clear. The officer felt he was under threat, and deadly force was justified. Now compare that to recent ICE protests. Demonstrators have blocked operations. They have thrown objects, broken law enforcement vehicle windows, rammed into ICE vehicles, and used cars to block and box in ICE agents' vehicles. And while ICE agents are attempting to carry out their duties, they are being chased and harassed throughout the streets. These demonstrators have done a lot to purposefully interfere with arrests. In multiple incidents, ICE officers fired their weapons during confrontations. And the media tone shifted almost immediately. Here is where the contradiction shows up. On January 6th, the framing was consistent. Police were assaulted, so the crowd was condemned. The January 6th protesters were not described as emotional or misunderstood. They were described as rioters, insurrectionists, a threat to the country. Ashley Babbitt's death was treated as tragic, but the focus stayed on officer safety and strict following of the law. She was breaching a secured area. Commands were being ignored. Deadly force was presented as a last resort. Now look at how many of those same outlets cover ICE shootings. Before investigations are complete, the language often shifts to condemnation. You hear words like reckless, disturbing, unjust. The focus moves away from the threat to officers and the public's need to follow the law, and toward assumptions about officer intent. When people throw rocks at ICE agents or rush them during arrests, it is often framed as resistance or community outrage. On January 6th, attacks on police were not contextualized. They were condemned outright. Same behavior, same danger to officers, very different language. So here is the consistency test. If assaulting federal law enforcement is wrong at the Capitol, it is wrong outside an ICE facility. If deadly force is justified when an officer reasonably fears for their life on January 6th, then the same standard has to apply when an ICE agent faces a vehicle moving toward them or an armed suspect fighting at close range. You do not have to support ICE policy to acknowledge basic reality, and you do not have to excuse January 6th to demand consistent reporting. What breaks trust is when the rules change based on political convenience. This is not about picking sides. It is about credibility. Law enforcement either deserves consistent standards or it does not. Protesters either lose moral authority when they assault officers or they do not. When media outlets apply different rules to the same behavior, people notice. And once trust is gone, it is hard to get back. Equal standards do not mean blind loyalty. They mean honesty, especially when the facts are uncomfortable.